And now it's time to get a unique slant on current events from your favorite half-Asian couple. Get ready to know what's happening in the world today with your hosts, Shaine and Nico.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? What's happening? This is Shaine.
Wow, you sound... Never mind. Hi, this is Nico.
I know, I sound so excited. But yeah, we are having, what is it?
We are having a guest today.
Yeah. So yeah, we're having a guest today, as she said. And it's a pretty important episode, I would think.
Yeah, very important for... I would think a lot of people would get something out of this. I know I did.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we had Jeff Leach on. He's an actor, a stand-up comic, and host of the Savage Snowflake podcast. And we had him on to talk about just mental health issues, but mainly about depression and suicidal thoughts, because Brody Stevens, who was a fellow stand-up comic to him, he recently passed away. And so we kind of wanted to just... overall talk about mental health, but yeah.
You forgot to mention why we're speaking with him about mental health. And the reason is because he has recently overcome his depression. Mm-hmm. And it's a lifelong struggle. So it's definitely worth listening to if you're feeling depressed or if you have been diagnosed with depression.
Yeah, for sure. Like she said, I hope everyone can take something from this. I know we did. And yeah, we really appreciate Jeff for coming on. So again, without any further delay, here is Jeff Leach. And before we get started, you can buy us a coffee at ko-fi.com/Hapu or on Patreon at patreon.com/Hapu, or you can donate to our PayPal at paypal.me/Hapu, or you can buy a t-shirt and other merchandise at teespring.com/stores/Hapu.
You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Petite Nikoko. And you can follow Shaine at Shaine Scalf. Also, you can support us by subscribing to our channel on YouTube at youtube.com/c/Hapu. All of the links for all the things we discussed will be in the description.
All right, we are here with Jeff Leach. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries, man. Nice to be here. How are you guys?
We're great.
How are you?
I'm very well. Yeah, having a nice Saturday so far. Already done a lot of work, feeling a sense of wonderful accomplishment, and now I'm talking to you guys, which is all I've ever wanted to do on my Saturday morning.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate you, because I know you're really busy, especially on the weekends. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's like a 7-day-a-week thing, really, in terms of doing stuff. But that's all right. It's good to be busy. I think it keeps the mind away from darker thoughts, right?
And that is true. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the whole point of this interview is, I guess, darker thoughts. So.
Or getting away from.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a consummate professional. I was providing the segue. You picked it up. It's perfect. We're in.
Yeah. So, and the main reason why I wanted to talk to you is because I don't know if everyone knows, but some do and some don't. But a stand-up comic, Brody Stevens, passed away recently, and there was a lot of people saying how great of a person he was, how good of a stand-up he was, and all that stuff. Basically, there's a whole bunch of memorials and all this stuff, and yours in particular really kind of spoke to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other people as well. But yeah, kind of, because you were basically explaining that you've had your own issues with depression and just like we were saying before with the segue, just dark thoughts and how they can pretty much consume you. So kind of the first question is, how did you realize at like the first point that you realized you were dealing with depression?
That's a good question. I mean, it's I definitely something I've recognized as an adult rather than as a child. I don't think throughout the majority of my teenage years, because I think I probably started being quite seriously depressed around 11, 12 years old. That was when I have that's my earliest memories of being very deeply depressed. But it wasn't until adulthood that I think I had the wisdom and the life experience to go, oh, hang on a sec, I've probably got depression, as
Yeah.
opposed to just being an emo teenager. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like the
When you
teenage
went,
years.
yeah, when you wear like, Nirvana hoodies and you skateboard and you listen to, a lot of dark hip hop and gangster rap and, a lot of rock and metal music, you just
Mhm.
go, I'm just an angry teen, man. I'm just an angry teen and I'm against the world. But as an adult, I look back on those at least a solid decade and a half where I just don't think I had any cognitive thoughts that, I think I probably suffer from a mental illness, which it really is. So yes, I think it was when I was in my probably early to mid 20s is when I went, I think this might actually be a medical condition, as opposed to me just sometimes being very deeply affected by things and allowing it to have an overarching effect on my general state of mind at all times. Now I find that I'm incredibly in control of it because I'm so open and honest about it, and because I've recognized what it is that I have and the best ways to counteract it, and also the best ways to recognize it. It's just all you can do with depression, I think, is start to implement a set of personal tools, and it will be different for every person. Some of them will be very similar, of course, because I think we undergo similar feelings if you do suffer from depression.
Yeah.
But you have to realize what your triggers are, how you can counteract it as quickly and easily as possible, and also how you can be honest enough and upfront enough with yourself to go, oh, whoa, 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 relax, dude. You're just depressed. You got depression. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. So I do think my early to mid 20s is when I finally started to be honest and realize that I probably had depression. But it wasn't until I'd say a year ago that I feel like I got any kind of serious control over my depression. And there were a number of reasons for that, and also a number of ways that I found best to counteract it.
Wow. So it's pretty recent then that you feel like you finally got a grasp on it. That's pretty. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking openly and honestly about depression I used to stream on Twitch quite extensively, and I still broadcast now on YouTube and Mixer and other platforms like that, Facebook Live. But I've always talked openly and honestly about depression because, or certainly in the last few years, because I realized it was something that I had, and I realized that a lot of other people, especially in the gaming communities, especially in the comedy worlds, a lot of people suffer from it, and it seems to be something quite prevalent amongst mirth makers as a gross generalization. And also people who maybe are more prone to social awkwardness or not being as socially adept as other people their age. So when you look at the gaming community, there's a lot of people who do like to hide away at home, play video games with the anonymity of online handles. And a lot of those people do have depression or anxiety. And that's the reason why they were drawn to those kind of creative pursuits or, playful pursuits or social pursuits, which are slightly protected by being at home in the safety of their own home behind a microphone and a headset. But yeah, I talk very openly and honestly about depression on the podcast that I do as well, Savage Snowflake podcast. I talked about it a lot on my streams. And that was a huge help to me. It was a huge resource for learning, because it's amazing once you tell people that hey, I got depression, or hey, I'm feeling really bad. And there's no real rhyme or reason for why I feel so horrendously shitty about who I am and about what I'm trying to achieve and about what the world thinks of me. And then once you realize, this is all down to chemicals and imbalances, it's amazing how freeing that can be. So as soon as I started to acknowledge and administer that truth to myself without sounding too, West Coast hippie, once I started to live my truth, man,
Yeah.
it's amazing how once you live honestly, then you're in an honest place to counteract those negative feelings,
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned, gamers and stand up because, there are, like you said, there are a lot of stand up who, they deal with depression or just have dark thoughts, whatever, and they have that outlet to kind of, well, I'm feeling bad, but I'm gonna let everyone else feel good because I'm making jokes and making them laugh and all that stuff. So yeah, that's an interesting point.
Well, I look at it like I look at a lot of my friends who are alcoholics or drug addicts. Addicts find it infinitely easier to deal with their own addictions when they're helping others with theirs. you know. So that's why they have the whole sponsorship program with AA, or NA or SLAA. You know, it's the idea of sponsoring someone else to counter their issues takes you outside of your own issues and your own negative thoughts and feelings, because you don't have time to be shitty about yourself because you're busy helping someone else with the feelings they have. And I think that's the same with depression in a lot of ways. I think that depression can become an addiction for people. People almost, I know that I certainly, and I can only talk about myself, I guess, but I do think this applies to other people. I was never wanted to be depressed. However, when I realized that there were certainly moments where I would almost revel in that depression. You know, I'd almost use it as a crutch. I go, well, you know, I just hate myself and the world's shit and everyone thinks I'm shit and that's just the way it is and blah, blah. And you get lost in that. Whereas as soon as you start to be honest about your own problems and then try and help other people with theirs, it's amazing how you're lifted out of that own place and you start to feel a sense of self-worth and a sense of value because you know that you're helping other people. And as I get older, that's become more and more of a focus. And, you know, I'm 35 years old now. I'm no spring chicken, but I'm certainly still a young enough man that I would like to think I've got a good, let's say, what am I, 35? Let's say at least a good 50 years, you know, modern medicine and all that could be 60. Yeah. But I've got another 50, 60 years and I could spend the next two parts of my life, you know, the next 2/3 of my life, helping a huge amount of people. I guess, you know, deal with and at least go some way to conquering the issues that I've already started to get quite a decent grip on. With someone like Brody, who, you know, I know that post spoke to a lot of people because it was less of a... Brody and I were not very close friends. I mean, I mentioned that in the post. I said that we'd only hung out a very small handful of times. You know, it's like 2 or 3 hangouts. In just the couple of hangouts we'd had, especially the podcast episode, he appeared on my podcast. And afterwards, we talked for a solid hour and a half about our depression and about counteracting that and about online bullying and about how he was dealing with being off the medication, which he then subsequently went back on. And you know, it sort of ultimately, I think that was part of the reason that led to his suicide. The post I wrote wasn't just, isn't Brody Stevens a wonderful comedian? He's going to be sorely missed. It was also, there's a couple of things that really came out of Brody's suicide that struck me quite seriously that I wanted people to be aware of. One was he was very deeply upset and saddened and hurt by hatred from strangers. He didn't understand why someone could take time out of their day to day to go, you know what? I am unhappy with the way that my life is. So the way I'm going to counteract that is to go to some comedian that I saw on a thing that made me jealous, or I wanted to be him, or I wanted to be around him, or I don't like his comedy. And I feel like if I put negativity out in the world, that's going to make me feel more empowered in my own misery. And it really caught up with him. I mean, I really do think that he committed suicide because partly the chemical imbalances of depression and he also suffered from bipolar disorder. Partly the medications. I think a lot of these medications, they're very hit and miss with people, you know, and America is such a medicated nation. It's kind of scary.
And everyone kind of reacts with medication differently. Yeah.
Very differently. Yeah. And it's a real potluck thing, which for someone who is suffering from very serious depression and bipolar disorder, that can be life-threatening. If you get it wrong, if the medication doesn't work, it can throw you further and further into that depression and that anxiety and that bipolar nature. And then the final thing was he was just really dealing in a bad way with hatred from strangers. And it was hard to say to him, you know, I'm very sensitive as well, probably too sensitive for the comedy industry. I know that Brody was. And that's why it had such a profound effect on me, his passing, not just because I'd made this new friend who I was very excited about spending time with, talking with, and hopefully helping to conquer his depression in the same way that I felt like I was starting to get a major grip on mine. But also, it took me back, his sadness took me back to a place that I felt very empathetic with. 2 years ago in New York City, I sat in my apartment on Christmas Day and worked out how to kill myself. And the only reason I didn't was because I got too high and too drunk to do it, and I passed out. You know, I sort of had everything planned out, and then I was, next thing I knew, I was waking up with a horrendous hangover and come down like, all right, well, maybe I'll just lay in bed all day and think a bit more about it. And ultimately I decided not to do it, and I decided to start reaching out to friends in a bigger way, and also to my community in a big way. Community of supporters and I guess fans, friends, fans. I don't know how to describe them.
Yeah.
Yeah, supporters. Let's just say supporters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I just Brody's passing made me in a very visceral way, put myself back into that place, feel happy that I didn't do what he did, but also feel incredibly angry, hurt, and sad that he didn't feel like he could reach out to people, or he didn't have that opportunity, and it was it was a real shame for the comedy industry, but also a real shame for the world. I think there was a man there who had very high highs and very low lows, but when he was just a guy who wanted people to laugh and have a good time. Very sad to see someone like that gone, especially when there's so many people right now who seem to be hell-bent on distancing themselves from other human emotions, other people.
Yeah.
There's a loss of empathy in the world, and that's very difficult to witness.
Yeah, and especially in today's social media world, it can amplify all that negativity because, especially if you're just on Twitter or whatever all day and you just see, a bunch of people saying, "Oh, you're an asshole, you suck, you can't do comedy, stop doing comedy, you should do something else."
Yeah.
That kind of shit can really get to you.
Absolutely. And also the other way, dude, as well. I think social media as a general, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that it connects people across the globe in a very instantaneous way, and people that might never have met each other. And
Yeah,
also
for
it
sure.
allows people to share their passions, their loves with each other. But also what it's done is it's a lie. Like a lot of like social media in particular has sold a utopian lie that people think they have to prescribe to, otherwise they're not good enough. So what I mean by that is it's not just people shit talking each other that can bring someone down. Also, if you're someone who suffers deeply from depression, feels a very low sense of self-worth, which is what most people with depression do feel, certainly myself as well, and I know Brody did. You look online, and if everyone else around you appears to be living their best life, #blessed, you know what I mean? That idea that, look at me. People don't share misery on social media. They share, look at this amazing meal I'm having with my friends, killing it, or, oh wow, I just got this new thing I'm really achieving, or, whoa guys, remember to live your best life. And social media influencers have been conditioned and trained by the brands that represent them, or they want to represent them. They sell constant, positive, upbeat, everything's great, everything's blessed. Look at how tight my buns are. Look at how great and white my teeth are. Look at how happy my relationship is. Look at how beautiful this food is that I'm eating. Look at me on the balcony of this gorgeous building that I'm renting or living in or owning. Look at this fancy car I'm driving. It's so much, like too much for the average human being to process. And we feel constantly that we are never matching up to those standards. So I personally found that I had to start being insanely honest. So when I'm, a bit broke, if you've ever been an artist, ever been a content creator, you'll know that some months you're fucking flush and you're like, wow, I got rent for the next 6 months from one job. And then other times you'll go, I haven't had a decent paying job for almost a year. As an actor and a comedian. And sometimes that's really hard. You're living, hand to mouth. So being honest about that, I think has helped me in terms of my personal mental well-being. But I also think it can be detrimental to a career and a brand, and Brody felt that very really, that he had to always present this positive thought. But then he also did what I like to do, and he got on Periscope and he talked honestly and openly about his medication, how he was dealing with mental illness. And if more people did that, I think everyone who was feeling weak emotionally would go, oh, it's okay that today I hate myself, or it's okay that today I'm struggling to pay the rent, or it's okay today that my skin doesn't look good, or that I'm a bit fatter than I wish I was, or whatever. It's okay. It's okay, because so is Kristen Wiig. She woke up with
Yeah.
with a zit today, and she shared that with me, and it's okay. And so is whatever. Hugh Jackman hasn't worked out for 6 months, and he's feeling a bit tubby, and that's okay. But people don't share that. I want to see Kim Kardashian crying whilst taking a shit on the toilet, and I want to see Kanye West drunk eating burgers and talking about, oh my God, I'm going to be so fat tomorrow, whilst he's got burger sauce on his chin. Like,
Well,
that's
instead they're gonna have Kenny G playing the saxophone in their whatever room that was for Valentine's Day, and look how awesome our love life is.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's a choice, but I think there's going to be over the course of the next 5 years, especially as people become more and more focused on happiness and well-being. And I'm not talking about the bullshit side of it. I'm not talking about that LA West Coast, mindfulness and wellness, live your best life. Everyone's doing great all the time. Just channel positive thoughts. Sure, all of those are great ideas. But I think as people become more aware that it's okay to feel shit sometimes, and they talk honestly about feeling shit sometimes, all of us will go, we're not going to revel in the negativity, but we all go, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for giving me the freedom to not think that I'm underachieving because you seem to be happy all the time. And that's always been one of my tenets, is that happiness is not a constant state. Anyone who's seeking happiness in their life is doing it wrong. You can't seek happiness. Happiness is a fleeting state of emotion. You should hope to be happy millions of times in your life, but it doesn't last for any period of longevity. What you should be seeking to be is supported, living an honest life, and also to be content with where you're at. Contentment is really what people should be aiming for. If you got a roof over your head, you've got someone in your life that you care about and that cares about you, and you're doing the things that you enjoy and that make you feel good and like you're achieving, that's what you should be aiming for. Not, oh, I've got all of this rich person stuff, or, oh, look at me, I'm I got rippling abs every day, a week of the day. Like, those people aren't happy. They're not fucking happy. And that's what we've seen. We've seen major celebrities, commit suicide. We've seen major influencers, comedians, actors, musicians kill themselves or overdose on drugs, which is just another, I think it's just another form of suicide, really. You look at someone like Matt Miller,
Yeah.
he killed himself. He did it with drugs, and it took longer, and it was over a period of time, but he ended up killing himself. And the reason he took all those drugs was not because he was having the best time of his life. It's because he was an addict.
Mm.
Do you think being a public figure, like especially with the internet and everything, do you think that makes things harder in terms of mental health
Yeah,
for those people?
absolutely, because we're responsible to sell that dream, But that's what I'm saying, is that you can choose to do one of two things. You can either choose to sell a dream that is false. So when I see people going, look at me with my fancy watch and my big cars. Look at like a kid, right? Tekashi 6ix9ine. He's a kid, basically. He's a young man, I guess. He's 21, 22, whatever. But he's basically a child, right? He's certainly got the mental capacity of a child in a lot of ways. And there's a guy who had millions in the bank selling this idea that I'm a gangster, I'm cool as fuck, look how rich I am, I'm making millions, I'm living my best life, I'm banging all the hot porn actresses, I'm a fucking G. And he's locked up now. He's locked up for 30 years. I guarantee that didn't get sprung on him. He didn't one day wake up and go, and now I'm going to prison for 30 years. He would have had conversations with lawyers. He would have known what was coming. He would have been desperately fighting tooth and nail against that. He would have been going through some dark shit. Now, a lot of that was brought upon himself. He did some terrible things to people. And if you do terrible things to people, you're going to be caught by the law. But he was selling still this living my best life attitude. That's not healthy. That's not healthy for anyone. And now he's a scared young man going to prison where he's going to get, I'm pretty certain he's going to have a very difficult time inside prison, Yeah. And his career's gone. His career's gone. His wealth's gone. His, the great life he was living is gone. And now that's a very extreme example, but I guarantee there's days where every single one of those yoga pant wearing, super ab holding, gorgeous Insta girls with, who post a butt pic every 3 days, I guarantee those girls look in the mirror sometimes and think they're fat, and it makes them really sad, and they think they're not going to live up to people's expectations of who they are. But they don't share that. They don't share those moments of weakness. They only share the check it out, live your best life, hashtag doing it. That's not healthy. It's really not healthy. So I think you have a choice as a public figure, or an influencer of any kind, or a performer, a creator of any kind, which is either you share the truth with your fans and your audience, or you don't. You live a lie. Someone like Lady Gaga, I think, has got it right. She's found a really good balance in between. She celebrates when she's up and she's open and honest when she's down. And it seems to have worked out pretty good for her. She seems to be pretty in control where she's at and who she is. And also she has an army of fans of millions
Yeah.
and millions of people around the world who really connect with her on that basis. And that's, for me, certainly that's becoming more and more of a focus. I know for someone like Brody, it was definitely a focus. It was just a shame that he couldn't draw enough strength from the fact that he had empathy from such a brilliant group of people who really did truly love him and what he did. He could only focus on people who didn't know him, didn't care about what he does, shit talking him online, or he posted all of his Amazon reviews for his album, and he was like, look at these mean reviews, look at people leaving mean reviews, and they haven't even watched it. They're not even talking about what they've seen. They're just shitting on me. And it was sad that that's what he focused on rather than how many people loved him,
So I don't know if you've seen arguments about this or if you've seen opinion on this, but there are those who say that when someone commits suicide, that's just a selfish act because there's all these people that care for them, especially someone who has a family. What do you say about that? That to people that say that when you commit suicide, you're just you're like copping out or whatever.
I think people who say that are being selfish themselves because they're only looking at how depression and that suicide affected them as a knock-on effect. They're not looking at what that person who was suffering from that depression that committed that suicide was undergoing. I understand absolutely why people would want to commit suicide because, like I say, I've sat there and thought about doing that myself once before. And, well, actually twice before when I was very young. But when I was very young, I don't think I ever had the balls to do it. I was kind of more just it was more of a bit of a call for help, ironically. But I think that I understand why someone would commit suicide because it's the only way to get peace and freedom from the feelings you're feeling. However, and I really, really want to drive this point home, it's not going to give you the peace you think. It will only have a knock-on effect that will cause a lot of sadness and hurt to other people. And the only thing that truly gives you peace is accepting where you're at mentally and applying every single possible human development from yourself that you can to counteract it. I knew that my depression was massively impacted by shitty weather. If I wake up and I hate myself and I think the world would be better up if it just swallowed me whole and spat me out, because that's how I feel about myself. When you open the curtains and the weather is terrible and it's wet and rainy and you can't go anywhere and people are angry and annoyed because of that, it encourages that feeling. So do drugs. So does heavy drinking. These are all depressants. They make you make you get lost more in that feeling. However, I went, all right, well, if that's how I feel, move to the sunshine. So I moved to LA, and it helped. I know that exercise always made me feel incredible. When I was younger, the only thing that staved off my incredible depression when I was a young child was the fact that I was so incredibly sporty. So now I work out all the time, and I go for hikes every morning. And I get vitamin D in my life, and I only spend time with people who I think have a love and respect for me, and are loyal to that relationship, and vice versa. I offer that to other people. All of these are very simple things, but it's amazing how hugely they can impact on a person's general well-being. And the fact that I now don't drink at all, and I work out every day, and I'm living in the sunshine, and I'm surrounded by people who are brilliant and talented and kind and considerate, has really taken me from a place of desperation to a place of great empowerment. And that's why I would say, I guess, to anyone who certainly has considered suicide as the only way out, there are other ways out. You just have to really start living them. And also, if I can say this, I mean, you're letting me monologue here, which
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I would like to think I hope I'm not dominating too much, and I hope it's
Oh
just
no,
it's
totally
interesting
fine.
conversation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but here's the other thing that I implemented. It's not going to work for everyone, but it had a massive impact on my own mental health and well-being. I realized that I put so much stock and time into my own internal thought processes about depression. So I would sit there and go, oh God, I really should work out because I want to look better. But you know what? Then I haven't got time to do it. And God, I just feel shitty about doing it and blah, blah, blah. I stopped doing that about a year ago. I decided if I feel something, I will ignore the internal monologue that normally follows that feeling. And I will just do the action that changes that feeling, that I know changes that feeling. So when I know I need to work out or I'm feeling a bit fat, instead of having a 20-minute conversation with myself in the mirror where I look at myself and hate myself, or laying in bed and hiding under the covers and just getting more inside that feeling, instead I just go, okay, look, just get up and just pick up your sports bag and get in your car. Just do it. Before you even have any of those internal thoughts, just get up and leave your house. And that's what I do. Grab my bag. I always have it ready by the door and grab it and I leave. And then before I know it, I'm in the car. And then before I know it, I'm 5 minutes down the road. And before I know it, after 10 minutes, I'm in the gym. And before I know it, I've done a 1 hour workout and I feel fucking elated. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all, and by ignoring, by not giving stock to those internal, horrendous, personal thoughts that serve no purpose to make you a better person, and by being the person you want to be, it made it such a huge difference to me. And it was the power of saying no to myself to some extent. I think that's how I would describe it. The power of saying no to myself. As soon as I start going, Jeff, you're shit, you work, I go, no, I'm going to go and do the opposite of what that voice inside of my head is telling me. And I got to be honest, it's been for me life changing. I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone, but
Yeah.
it's amazing how sometimes when you just stop listening too much to a certain voice in your head and start being the person that you know you want to be, it can really have a massive impact, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I know Joe Rogan talks about that too, where he's like, anytime you are making excuses about, doing whatever you're gonna do, he just says, just stop thinking about it because the more you think about it, the more you're not gonna do what you're wanting to do in the first place.
Exactly. The more
Yeah.
excuses you will come up with, or more
Yeah.
reasoning you'll come up with for why you can't do it. Whereas if you just get on and do it, it's funny because you just go, oh, wow, I just did it. That
Yeah.
thing I thought I was incapable of doing, I just got up and did it. So, yeah, that's been really useful for me.
Yeah. I know for us, Nico and I know that we kind of fall into that too, where, you
You
know,
get paralyzed thinking
yeah.
about it instead of doing it,
Hmm.
which
Where
makes
you're
it
Yeah.
you're
worse.
you're just you're just trapped in those thoughts of, oh yeah, we should work out such and such day, and then when that day comes, we're like, oh, I guess we're gonna exercise. Oh, we got other things to do. Okay, forget it. Like
Yeah.
other things
Yeah.
happen or whatever. So yeah, it's sometimes
Absolutely.
I don't know. I guess I'm sounding like I'm making excuses, but sometimes when other things come up, it's like, well, I guess we'll push that to some
Ah, bro,
other day.
you're not making excuses.
Yeah.
There's a voice in your head who tells you, because if you suffer from depression, which I'm assuming you do by what you're discussing, um, you have a voice in your head that tells you you can't do those things. That's
Mhm.
not necessarily everyone has that, but that's one of the unfortunate side effects of depression is there's a voice in your head that tells you you can't do this thing, or you're not good enough to do this thing, or you're worthless. If you
Mhm.
just tune that voice out, it takes work, and it took me 34 years, but now I don't. It's still there. I know the voice is there. I just don't listen to him. You
Yeah.
know, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. God, it's amazing how that's changed my life.
It's crazy
So
that how old were you? Did you say again? You were 35, 34?
I just turned 35 a couple of
Wow.
weeks ago, but I was 34. I think it was only a year ago that I really got control, this level of control and understanding of what my depression is, and felt empowered to help others in a big way. I've always listened to others. I've always offered support since I was a
Mhm.
kid, but in a really major, impactful way now. I've actively been seeking other people who suffer from the same problems. And I'll always say the first and foremost thing I suggest to anyone is to see a professional, because I'm not a trained professional. However, in some respects, I'm one of the highest trained professionals because I suffered from it really horrendously, and I've conquered it, and
Yeah.
that's the best training to deal with depression. So just talking to someone who understands you can often be a great source of inspiration. That video, I made a video on Instagram after Brody's passing because I wanted to talk a bit more openly about my own depression and also about what Brody and I talked about, and the message, the post I put on Twitter and Instagram where I talked a lot about him and his
Mhm.
passing and the reasons for that. And I did a video and I got very deeply upset and I cried my heart out because it took me back to that place I was at 2 years ago when I thought about killing myself. And it it was liberating. And I said to people, look, I just wanted to make sure I came on, and if any of you, anyone, I don't care if you're a complete stranger, you're a close friend, you're a colleague, any of you feel remotely like that, talk to me, like send me a DM, and I will endeavor to reply as quickly as possible. I'm pretty good at replying within an hour to most people, but even if it takes me 24 hours, just wait to talk to someone, because it's amazing how helpful that can be. And I had a flood of messages in my inbox, and I talked to those people. Some of them were 17-year-old kids. There was a little 17-year-old boy going, I got depression, I really struggle with this, that, and the other. And I talked to him, and I put myself back into where I was at 17, and I gave him advice, and I encouraged him to seek some professional help. And then there was, people in their 50s and 60s, people I've known for years who I didn't even know were going through that, who reached out. So I think it's a more widespread feeling and situation for a lot of people. It's just very hard often to share weakness with others. People think you're going to get attacked if you share weakness, and often you are. But it's amazing how many people come forward and empathize with you if you just show a little vulnerability.
Yeah, like kind of like how we're doing this podcast. I know for sure when I was younger, I know I would have suicidal thoughts, and I don't know about you, but I'm sure you did too.
Yeah, I have felt that way before, and I think that you're right, especially about the inner voice. Like that has been something that I've struggled with for a long time and still do.
It's kind of like that angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. The angel's like, hey, you should do this. You'll be good. And the other one's like, no, fuck you. You shouldn't do that. You're stupid or whatever. Yeah. So
Absolutely. Except in a lot of situations, and certainly my own, is that there's no angel on the shoulder. There's just the devil going, you shit, you shit, you shit, you shit, you shit, you shit, you shit. And you're like, oh, bro, give me a break for a minute.
Yeah.
Now, myself personally, I've never taken any kind of medication for depression. And I hope that I never have to, because I do think it can have either you build up a tolerance, a resilience, either it can deepen and further your depression if they get the medication wrong, or it can become a crutch for a lot of people. I'm not saying some people don't need it. If you're sitting around with razor blades on the side of your bedside and you've slit your wrists on more than one occasion, yeah, you probably need medication. You probably need some medication and some really consistent, careful, professional care to help you deal with it. Fortunately, touch wood, I've never been that bad, and I hope that I feel very I understand, and I feel very passionately supportive of people who have got that level of depression. But I do think if you can conquer it bit by bit on your own, it will only further your sense of self-worth and achievement, and that's kind of what anyone with depression should be seeking, is an understanding that you do have self-worth, and also that every time you conquer those dark voices, you are achieving in a big way.
Yeah, it's interesting because, well, she mostly more than me, but like on social media for sure, especially Twitter, because when you're saying before about all this positive stuff, that's Instagram. Instagram is just a whole bunch of, like you were saying, look at me, I'm awesome, I'm staying at this nice fancy hotel or whatever. But Twitter's like the complete opposite. It's it's just a cesspool of hate, and not all the time, because I mean we met on Twitter and we're getting married soon, but
congratulations, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, thank you. But yeah, it could be just the complete opposite, where it's just a bunch of, especially if you spit out an opinion, and obviously you're gonna get people who are gonna disagree with you, and that's totally, understandable, and obviously you should expect that,
It's just the way some people are just very unnecessarily, or like very, I don't know how to explain it. They're just unnecessary.
It's like they go straight for
caustic. They're caustic.
Yeah.
They're caustic, and they have no empathy. For instance, look, I have to look at it, and I'm sure over the course of my life, guarantee it, especially in this modern age where people love to unearth, poor behavior of public figures from a decade or 2 decades ago. I'm pretty sure that even up until about 2 or 3 years ago, I've said mean-spirited things to people. I've lashed out at people. And I certainly, if people came into my chat when I was broadcasting regularly, people came into my chat with negativity or heckles or tried to shit on me, or trolling. I used to revel in wrecking trolls. Like that would be a thing that I loved doing. And I would really go for the jugular for them. If they started calling me, hey, you faggy Brit, or, oh yeah, you should just kill yourself. Why don't you just kill yourself? Whatever. I would go really hard on them and really highlight why I think they were doing that. And a lot of what I would say would be so raw and honest, it could be really damaging. So whilst there's a part of me that feels that I had the right to snap back. If someone came after me, there's something in it like, well, it's self-defense. It's emotional self-defense to like highlight why they're doing that and what's lacking in their world that they feel they have to go after me. But then on another sense, I realize now that the reason for a lot of people, look, it's like bullies. Why do kids bully at school? They often bully because they're being bullied, you know? Bullies are born because at home their older brother beats the shit out of them, or their uncle comes over and assaults them, sexually assaults them, or they feel like they have no control in their life, so they want control over someone else's and someone else's emotions. That's why bullies bully. They bully because it's easy to make someone else feel bad, which makes them feel like they got some more control over how they feel, you know? And it's the same with people who go after you on Twitter. They're often weak people. And they're feeling weak themselves. And now I realize that, but you know, previously I guess I would have gone, well, this person's just got no soul. So let me fucking ruin them and make them grossly aware of how lonely, sad, and pathetic their existence is. And that's probably not the right way to do it. I certainly feel like these days I'm less inclined to go after hecklers and trolls in that way. Because I don't think that that doesn't improve me, you know? So why would I do it?
Yeah, I know Nico and I are definitely, like you were saying before, we're definitely guilty of, sometimes just going for the throat or whatever without really thinking about what we're saying. We just do it and then like maybe, self-defense. But yeah,
that's the human condition. We want to protect ourselves, you know, but it still doesn't make it right. And I think looking at every facet of how you behave and what you put out into the world, that's one of the things, again, that Brody taught us, if nothing else, is that, Festival of Friendship, man. Get out there and get it and be good and be happy and spread that positivity and spread some mirth. And I feel like that's definitely the focus of my life these days. But it could have gone the other way if I hadn't have been as honest as I have been about how shitty I felt about myself, Really don't like myself. And it's only now I'm starting to.
Yeah, I think liking yourself is the first step before you can start liking others.
Yeah, I mean, there's that cheesy thing. How can you love someone else until you love yourself? How can you love someone else until you love yourself? But it's true.
It is, yeah.
It's true. Cheesy phrases exist for a reason.
Yeah.
It's just, unfortunately, they're often peddled by people who don't emulate what they say they're trying to put out into the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I think recently Patton Oswalt, when he was doing some of his Twitter stuff, whatever, I think some Trump supporter went after him, and then Patton Oswalt realized that person had like some mental issues. So he was actually, hey, even though we disagree 100% politically, this guy really needs some help because, he's having mental issues, and not like in a, he wasn't doing it in some kind of condescending, oh, look at this asshole, or whatever. He was actually doing it in a, in a serious, heartwarming type of way.
Yeah, and he was like, don't attack this guy, please.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, it was kind of interesting how that whole happened. But yeah, so just want to go ahead and end it here. We've been going on for almost an hour, so yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, again, Jeff, really appreciate you coming on and kind of speaking about this really important issue, and I hope some people can, well, not just some people, hope everyone can take a little bit out of it. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. And like this is the point that I guess I would like to make, if I can, as like a closing statement, is that this is really the only thing that does help, is having conversations like this, honest conversations, open conversations, and they shouldn't be miserable. I would like to think anyone who listens to this conversation and suffers from depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder, any of those things that can have an overarching effect in your life, conversations like this are not designed to remind you of how shit your situation is and how sad you might be or how affected you might be. It's to remind you that there's a way out of that. And it's not suicide. It is conversation. It is honesty. And, you can come back from what you think is the brink. However low you think you are, that only highlights that there are happier stages ahead of you, happier levels that you can reach. And you know, on a more personal note, my DMs are always open. So if you're ever feeling like you can't speak to anyone, say hello on Twitter or Instagram. Just hit me up, send me a message, and I'll respond, and I'll impart whatever advice I can, or just listen.
And all of the social media links and everything will be in the show notes too.
Yeah.
So if everyone would like to follow, then that will be available.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks very much, guys. It's a pleasure
Yeah.
to talk to you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate it.
All right. So once again, thanks for coming on the show, Jeff, and really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to talk about this very important issue. I hope everyone was able to take something out of it.
Yeah, and this is probably the 5th time recording this ending, so I think we're just going to end it there.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Follow us on social media. Go to our website.
And don't forget to follow Jeff on social media.
Yes, please. That would be also great. Subscribe to us on YouTube. All that good stuff. Anyway, we will see you in the next one.
Yep.
Bye.
And we'll be married in the next one. Bye.
That is true.
Now you know what's happening. Thanks for listening. If you want to support the show, go to happasupremacy.com and follow our social media. Have a great day.